Trans activists are actively working to silence opposition by targeting funding bodies of organisations that work to promote women's sex-based rights. What are your experiences with this?
Well, thank you for the question, which is really an opening to talk about my own organisation, or the organisation I've set up with a group of other women, Feminist Legal Clinic, which is at this stage entirely operated by volunteers, and it doesn't have any funding really, but we do have a free shared office space, thanks to an accommodation grant from the City of Sydney Council. And until now, the City of Sydney Council have been happy with us as tenants and have supported our work. However, in February, we helped organise the launch event for the Declaration on Women's Sex-Based Rights. And this event took place at the University of Sydney. It was hosted by Professor Bronwyn Winter. And we had a panel of speakers, which included one young woman who had detransitioned and was very anxious about speaking out publicly. And we were very conscious about security, and we were careful how we promoted the event. But despite all our precautions, our opponents got a tip off, because in the last few days before the event, we suddenly started receiving masses of bogus registrations, including some of them in the subtle name Fuck Off Turf. So on the day itself, the event was disrupted by a bunch of protesters who, despite the efforts of security guards, stormed the auditorium, snatched the microphone from the speakers, and had a good old rant at the audience, who basically sat there pretty politely waiting for it all to pass. And indeed, after a few minutes, the protesters ran out of steam and they took off before the police arrived. So we thought that was really the end of it, although they did steal a box of our pamphlets on the way out. But sometime following this event, we were contacted by our landlord, the City of Sydney Council, who had received complaints about the event. And apparently the trans activists had done some detective work and traced the Women's Human Rights Campaign back to Feminist Legal Clinic. And they were demanding that the City of Sydney withdraw their accommodation grant and all their support for our organisation. And as a result of this, we have now received a B rating in our annual review and have been told we need to cease our affiliation with the women's sex-based rights movement and purge our website of material which they feel has the potential for generating discrimination and negative attitudes towards transgender members of the community. I was rather chuffed, really, that they talked about the women's sex-based rights movement. I thought that was actually a win, that there was some acknowledgement that there is a movement that exists. But nevertheless, they claim that our actions put us in breach of the general performance criteria set out in our tenancy agreement, and they've given us a 3-month ultimatum to change our ways, or we will have our tenancy terminated. So we have subsequently circulated this correspondence, and dozens of our members and supporters have written to council to protest, including quite a few university professors and at least one senator, and lots of domestic violence workers who support our service and the work that we do, and also many lesbian and feminist activists. And we have also written to council refuting the claims made against us and pointing out that they are requiring us to choose between retaining our office or retaining our support within the community. And it's now been 1 month since we received their letter, just over 1 month, I think. And we're still waiting to see how this is going to resolve. I was hoping to have a few more of these things resolved by the time I did this talk, but we're actually waiting on a lot of things to be resolved. However, in some ways, losing our office has not been the greatest challenge that we have faced. In our first year of operation, I lost basically our management committee over this issue, or at least the 2 conveners, and that was far more demoralising. And that happened after I attended a meeting of NGO delegates in Geneva at Australia's report back to CEDAW, the women's treaty body. And at that meeting, I expressed opposition to self-identification of sex. I opposed it being included in a consensus statement because I said there is no consensus on this topic. And yeah, as a result of that, 5 organisations in the sector sent complaints about me, and that resulted in my conveners choosing to resign rather than put their own careers and reputations at stake by publicly supporting me. Fortunately, I was able to quickly recruit a new management committee made of sterner staff, but certainly that was a bit of a baptism by fire. I've also experienced quite a few inexplicable bureaucratic difficulties, including my insurer trying to arbitrarily increase our premiums mid-term. I had to take that battle on. The Charities Commission is refusing us registration for tax deductible status that would normally be available to a charity such as ours. It's hard to know or to establish that these difficulties are linked, but certainly it's worth being aware of the range of ways trans activists can undermine gender critical organisations.